see politicians want to enact harmful credit card mandates that could take away your cash back and rewards points. Perks that stretch your budget and make life a little easier. Losing these benefits means less money for your family's everyday essentials like gas and groceries. The perks you rely on could disappear, leaving you with higher costs and fewer options. Tell Congress to guard your card and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card mandates.
Paid for by Electronic Payments Coalition.
A warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in a few minutes by one of our good friends in Justin Perri, who does such amazing work over at Chalk Volley Bets. He's going to be joining me, and we're going to be talking about taking a look at volatile/not volatile teams. Why a team like Alabama is actually very consistent, but they're just consistently inconsistent. We're going to take a look at some of these teams where there might not be a whole lot that we can expect out of them. There are some teams where we know exactly what we can expect out of them as well. So it's going to be a great chat there. We're also going to be chatting with him about a team out there that he knows and loves that he thinks might struggle a little bit towards the early part of the season. And we're going to talk about perhaps taking some alternate lines to be able to maximize some of these teams that they do play unique style, that they do play games where you could see the sways be very, very big in terms of how much they win/lose by. So we're going to be chatting about that and so much more. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And while I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. EdgeBoost is making sure that bettors are able to have access to the funds that they so badly desire whenever and wherever. And for EdgeBoost, they make sure that 100% of gambling transactions are approved. When you go to edgeboost.bet, you want to make sure that you put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. And additionally, over at EdgeBoost, you get cashback rewards as you utilize it as well. And we are always rewarded when this man is awarded as Justin Perri, just a wealth of knowledge over at Chalk Volley Bets. Does a great job on the college side of things. And for those that are jonesing for some basketball action this time of year, I know that Chalk Volley Bets has been doing some live betcasts with regards to the WNBA. They did so with regards to the NBA playoffs as well, as they always do once the college basketball season wraps up. So Justin is busy all 12 months out of the year. He does an amazing job over there. And also at Pitcher List, for those that are looking for a little bit of baseball, he does a great job over there as well. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first and last name, Justin Perri. That last name is spelled Perri, the number 8 altogether. And Justin, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Greg, always a pleasure to be here. Excited to talk a little college basketball. I mean, 3 months out, but still always never enough time to prepare for a upcoming season. 6,500 games. They go by too fast, and, you can't miss any opportunities if you want to fully capitalize.
Oh, I am right there with you. And Justin, I want to lead it off with this just because with every offseason, it feels like the landscape is changing more and more. And has there been anything that you've done this offseason that may be a little bit different from what you've done in past offseasons?
Actually, yeah, I think I'm giving a little bit more of a variability factor into my rankings in terms of like the way I let my dynamic power rankings kind of breathe throughout the season. It's been something I've been talking with a couple of my friends in the industry about. I just think there's some way that needs to be, anticipated for teams that we have like an uncertainty around to just essentially be a little uncertain about them. Like there just are going to be a few teams that don't exactly have their identity set in stone, whether it's a new coaching staff, a new centerpiece at a position, especially at like the mid-major level where you do still have some of the continuity that you used to see at the high majors, but allowing my metrics to essentially prove to themselves that we might not be ready to make like a conclusion on the team and to essentially try to be a little bit more patient rather than, jumping in on premature signals, which I think cost me a little bit of money last season.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that that is so interesting to be taking a look at because you do have some teams that can be very hit or miss towards the beginning part of the season. And just how difficult is it to be able to look at things in the offseason and have that ready to go night number one? Because the way that I look at the beginning of the college basketball season is that a lot of people see opportunity, and there certainly is opportunity, but I think that there's a lot of volatility. And I always think that that's a proper word to use when it comes to like that first 2 weeks of the college basketball season, because night number one, night number two for a lot of these teams, I don't even know if sometimes they know what they're going to get out of themselves.
Especially with the way college basketball is structured right now, the non-conference high majors end up playing these NET stuffers that are down low to try to make sure the resume looks good, or maybe a warm-up game because, you don't want to take a bad loss, or you go on the road, or even sometimes you don't even want to invite low majors into your own building. I mean, it can be a little risky. So a lot of teams, they go far down the ladder, and you do get like these very, I guess, inconsequential games where the win is so certain, is so positively assured that it's like, all right, let's test out some rotations. We don't know who's going to get what minutes. We're not really sure what we're even going to run, but we're going to win. We're going to figure it out. We're going to try some pairings. We're going to try some motions. We're going to see how, running through the sky works. Those games can be very hard to handicap. Now, I think you do want to be a little gung-ho. I'm a part of the school of thought that believes you want to attack those first few weeks. And honestly, I think right now the advantage there lies a little bit less in the metrics as much, and a little bit more in traditional style of beating the book to the roster composition through understanding the talent, who's going to be on these teams, and estimating minutes. Not even if you're, to be perfect, but there are going to be spots where the fit of the roster, you can by a bucket or two beat Vegas to the conclusion of where these teams are actually going to result against even some of these early season matchups.
Yep, and I do agree with you there. I think that the best value that you are going to find is going to be early on during the season. Sometimes you have your hits, sometimes you have your misses, but that's what it's all about with regards to college basketball. As our good friend in Justin Perri does great work over at Chocolate Valley Bets, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I do think that part of what has led me to success in non-conference play over the last few years has been looking at these teams that play a very demonstrative style. Like, I do believe that there is something to having to try to prepare for a zone out of the blue, having to prepare for a team like Abilene Christian, Merrimack, these teams that they generate a whole bunch of turnovers. Is that something that you take a look at a lot earlier on during the season? Because when these teams are out of conference, having a demonstrative style like a Merrimack that generates a lot of turnovers, I always think that that throws a lot of teams for a loop. And even if they figure it out in the second half, sometimes if a team like Merrimack is getting like 15 plus points, that first half of a team being confused could be enough to be able to cover that spread.
And it's such an interesting example. Merrimack, not super local to me, but they were super impressive last year, and I had to eat a little crow, and then I was a little lower on them than I should have been. Clearly, that junk zone and is really just so effective at amplifying some of what they actually lack that might be exposed if they didn't play in such a style, right? And what do I mean by that? They're not necessarily going to be the most athletic, biggest team, but by attacking you in an unorthodox way, you can sort of hide that, and you get some of the effectiveness that you might not be expecting with such the talent level that they've had. And that's a testament to the coaching and to the discipline of these players. So it's been really great. And I think, it creates mathematically, for betting purposes and projections, it creates a environment where I think the variance is actually lower. I think this is actually a team that you can expect more consistency out of, because they have such an identity where, it's not necessarily going out there and trying to out talent you on any given night. Like, they're going to go and they're going to play their brand of basketball. They're going to try to cause chaos across the court at every level. They're going to attack you in the zone. They're going to force those turnovers, and they're not going to deviate from that. I'm never sure who's going to be the guy on teams where it's a bunch of guys. And sometimes, again, even a well-composed strategy, they can't compare to the level of talent, is still going to fall. But you can, with effective strategy, boost what you are really resulting with on the basketball court. So, yeah, I think early season, you want to find teams where the spray of potential results is more narrow, so that you can, trust your estimations more. Going and attacking those teams that have such unique styles is very smart. And you can do that in a multitude of ways, not just a a zone style. You could attack pace style, shot selection style. Some of these teams that play very hyperbolically distinguished versions of the game do actually lead to reliability in some form.
Yep, and I think that that's so interesting that you bring that up, because when it comes to volatility, you just mentioned that Merrimack actually presents a little bit less of that. And I think that this is a good stopping point for part number one. And then in part number two, we're going to talk about teams that, for lack of a better term, they're consistently inconsistent. I also have to ask Justin about a team or two that he's feeling a little bit bullish/bearish on coming into the upcoming season as well. So we're going to do that on the flip side right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peters, and now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
DC politicians want to enact harmful credit card mandates that could take away your cash back and rewards points. Perks that stretch your budget and make life a little easier. Losing these benefits means less money for your family's everyday essentials like gas and groceries. The perks you rely on could disappear, leaving you with higher costs and fewer options. Tell Congress to guard your card and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card mandates.
Paid for by Electronic Payments Coalition.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always a pleasure to be joined by Perri. He does such great work over at Chalk Quality Bets. I know that he is very hard at work taking a look at college basketball. And this time of year, he actually presents some value with regards to the WNBA betcast that he does over at Chalk Quality Bets as well. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first and last name, Justin Perri. Last name is spelled Perri, the number 8 altogether. And Justin, we left off talking about a team like a Merrimack, and I thought that you brought up something very intriguing with them and so many other teams that play a unique style, and that you sort of know what you're going to get out of them a little bit more. But what are some of the teams that coming into the season you feel like you know what you're going to get out of them? Because obviously a team like Alabama, there's so much volatility with regards to their three-point shooting. When they put it up, you just don't know what you're going to get there. North Florida is always an interesting example. When you take more than 50% of your shots from three-point range, they have a little bit of a change in coaching, but they did stay in-house, so I do expect them to be much of the same from what we've seen in past years. Those are always teams where you're going to feel really, really smart if you take the points and they cover, and if you take the points and they don't cover, you're probably going to feel like a moron because the swing of results is so big. But we're just a few teams that you just feel good about what you're going to be able to get out of them, and you feel like they're consistent.
You make an interesting example with Alabama that I think you could probably make the argument the other way, that their shot selection numbers and the way that they attack the rim the three is essentially a consistency. The result has such variability because of the threes that you can be essentially led to think that they aren't playing a consistent game. They're consistently inconsistent, and they welcome that because that baseline, the average of that inconsistency is still higher than everybody else's consistency, and that's the whole freaking game plan for Alabama. It's like, all right, just on any given night, we're going to be better on average. And that should eventually lead us with a little bit of extra stuff in there to a winning formula. And they're right. And so that's an interesting example. I think there's probably people that'll go either way on that one. But another one that comes to mind for me has been the Mean Green, North Texas, who's run so slow and has created such an interesting dynamic over the years where, you're just not scoring on them. And that creates such a great opportunity as an underdog whenever they're slept on, because they can just shut off the spout to the opponent's offense and, dry up every option. And even if they aren't effective offensively themselves, they are able to maintain a presence in every game. And, especially defending home court or against conference opponents they know well, and even non-conference opponents, like you mentioned earlier, that might not be fully aware of how dominating their presence can be, even maybe with a good scout. Those are the types of things I like to lean into, because at the end of the day, the best thing you can do is try to limit how much uncertainty there is in your estimation. And a lot of people try to hit the nail on the head and view maybe sports betting as like, all right, well, let me perfectly set the line. Here's my number. Here's what I make it. I like this side because I think it's going to be this. My vision is a little bit more of like a wave particle duality type of thing, where you sort of look at it as like a spray, and you want to sort of see the probability density of where the potentials of every game are going to land, and try to analyze the shape of that distribution to truly find where there might be an advantage on one side of the offered line or the other. And so teams that give you an ability to cut off the edge cases. So, they could just have their best players fall apart, or, you want to find teams where their strategies are going to more likely work because they have, I guess, a more foundational aspect to them that you can trust as you start the season in early November. It's a very different ball game by the time you get to mid-December, especially, early January. You might as well be handicapping a new sport.
And I think that that's so interesting that you bring it up, because with a team like Alabama, might they actually present a little bit more value with regards to like alternate lines? Because with regards to the way that they play, you are right. They're consistently inconsistent. And I think that that's a very good way of putting it. Whereas if they're hitting their threes, they can cover that spread by 20 plus points. If they're not hitting their threes, they might miss on that spread by 20 plus points. And if you play it out 1,000 times, you're going to get a little bit more of, shall we say, a range of results. And that could be an example of being able to utilize the more offerings that we've got in this day and age, rather than just taking the traditional minus 110 and trying to maximize with plus money.
Look, I mean, it might be an interesting thought process to follow, and I like that a lot. I just think you want to make sure that, you're not just assuming that, you're going to beat the sports books to that. They probably have that same ability to analyze the probability density that, everyone does. So at some level, there might be like a spot to do that, and maybe it might be more profitable to take Alabama on an alt line or fade Alabama on an alt line this season than it is to take them on the standard line. That might be very true because of that variability. But in my estimation, you're probably going to find like shorter prices on them on alts, just because, it's all cooked in that the 3-point really does amplify the range of outcomes. So interesting. And you're probably more likely to find this type of edge there than, I don't know, putzing around on the minus 110s. It's a hard business, especially if you're, betting on liquid enough lines at post or even midday before close. It's a tough game, and you know that. I mean, and a lot of the people who are here listening know that. So I think, that's a worthwhile thing to look into, and maybe even apply out into the styles of other teams. I mean, you want to talk about teams that maybe really struggle to play in their own gym, or play away from their own gym and dominate at home. And when we see teams like that all can't come out the gate strong, we see teams that dominate in the second half. I mean, I don't love the trend game, but at the other end, like if you can really figure out a reason why, in terms of maybe the basketball X's and O's, whether it be adjustments or the way that maybe they wear teams down, like we saw with certain physical entities in college basketball last year, there's a lot of potential to discover an edge case that isn't just as straightforward as maybe this team is over or underrated in the market.
Yep, I think that is so interesting to take a look at. And they don't build those lovely buildings out there in Atlantic City, here in Vegas, what have you, because the sports books aren't doing a good job. And certainly the penny slots have a little bit of something to do with that as well. You always have to throw that in there as well, because everyone loves to talk about the sports books, but we all know that if you own a casino, the penny slots is where the money is truly at. But the money on this podcast is always with Justin Perri, lending great insights. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And just as you've been researching here in this offseason, I know you talked about how you're taking a little bit of a different approach. Have there been a few teams that have been popping off the radar as to teams that you feel like might be a little bit over/undervalued when it comes to the beginning part of the season? And I ask this knowing that obviously it's going to be based on the numbers that we get towards the beginning part of the season. Obviously, it's very speculative, but are there a few teams that are really catching your attention here in the offseason that you might be able to find a little bit of value on?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my hometown team, St. John's here, and people who have heard me come on the show will know that I am a New Yorker, tried and true, but I think these Johnnies are going to come into the season very overrated. And I think it's going to be ripe for the picking against the spread. I just don't think we saw in either of the two Rick Pitino years him take these early games super seriously in terms of covering the spread. And then on top of that, we know for a fact that we're going to be working with a point guard who is essentially going to be seeing some of his first game speed action in this non-conference schedule. And they're going to give him a great opportunity to show up early and often. But I do think that expecting this to be a top 5 team off the bat is ambitious, and they could get there. And they might be a team that you want to bet on. Like if you were only allowed to make futures and you weren't allowed to touch your sports book for the rest of the up and downs of the season, yeah, maybe you could get a little bit of value if you think they make the Final Four. But I think there's going to be opportunities to get better prices than what you're getting preseason on this very heavily advertised team that's coming off the heartbreak, that makes all the signings. I wouldn't be shocked to see them struggle at some point. And so that means fading them early in the season against the spread. I don't think they're going to drop games to beatable opponents, but I do think there's reason to think there's some growing pains that likely get ironed out. I think they iron them out, but going to be ready to capitalize on them while they occur.
Yep, and there's a big difference between a team being a 25-point favorite and losing outright and only losing by like 10, 12 points. I could very much see that being the case, or having some ho-hum games that are, and air quotes here, closer than the experts think. So I think that that's a nice look there, and what's always a great look is getting you aboard, Justin. You do such an amazing job. Take a look at this great game of college basketball. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
For sure. It's very easy to follow along. Everything we do over is at Shot Quality Bets on Twitter. You can find the Betcast show, which is our pride and joy, our most fun bit of content. Our live betting extravaganza happens all throughout the college basketball season. And even right now in the summer for WNBA, you can tap in and bet alongside Shot Quality Live with software that shows expected scores in up to the minute, fashion. It's really great. We have a lot of fun with it a couple times a week. So come check us out over there at Shot Quality Bets. You can visit the website as well. I do a pick of the day. I think we just won another one. So it's been fun, and that's all free content. So anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more about what we do over at SQ, that's a great place to start. And Greg, I always appreciate you giving me the chance to talk about it.
And it is always great to be able to have Justin on board. He's such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this great game of basketball, whether that be the NBA, college basketball, the WNBA. Heck, if there were lines on AAU basketball, I'm sure that he would be crushing it in the AAU circuit as well. So a big thanks to Justin for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. Be on the lookout for some conference previews. Those are going to be coming up in the next few days, so that'll be very exciting. And I'll catch you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you so much.
DC politicians want to enact harmful credit card mandates that could take away your cash back and rewards points. Perks that stretch your budget and make life a little easier. Losing these benefits means less money for your family's everyday essentials like gas and groceries. The perks you rely on could disappear, leaving you with higher costs and fewer options. Tell Congress to guard your card and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card mandates.
Paid for by Electronic Payments Coalition.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.